Hello everyone, you're welcome back to my channel. Thank you for stopping right here on my space today. I'm Luchke Styles. I share sewing tutorial videos and pattern drafting in case it's the first time of coming across my channel. So in today's tutorial, I'll be quickly sharing with you all how to sew this queen and neckline bustier flake gown with gathered net. So if this is something you're interested in learning how to do, please continue watching and don't also forget to hit on that subscribe button. Thank you to all my subscribers, and if this is your first time, please join this family because it's never going to be a thing of regret. So without much ado, I'm just going to get started with this tutorial. So in the first part of this tutorial, which was basically the drafting part, I shared the detailed process on how to draft this particular gown which I'm about to sew in this particular video. So you can just say that this is the second part of this tutorial, which is the sewing part, because I'll be joining all of these drafted pieces together. All right, so I'd advise you please go and watch out the drafting part of the tutorial, and I'll also be linking the video to that tutorial in the comment section. All right, so this is actually for you not to get confused, because if you don't watch out the first part of this tutorial and if you're watching this particular one, you will not really understand all the process and everything which I'll be doing in this particular tutorial. So it's greatly advisable you please go and watch out the first part of this tutorial, which is the drafting part, so that you understand every steps I'm taking right here in the second part of this tutorial. So this is basically the exact point I stopped in the first part of this tutorial, and I've already gone ahead to cut out my wording and also cut out this my pattern paper on my fabric. So you can see that I added this joining allowance all the way around. At the side, I added 1.5 inches, which is basically for this joining allowance. Okay, so for the other side, I added half of an inch all around. Okay, at that point I added half of an inch. At the top part, I added half of an inch, and also on the sleeve part, you can see that I added half an inch at the sides and underneath, excluding the armhole part. Okay, so for the back part of this gown, I also added 1.5 inch at the side for sewing allowance, and for the dart I had to make this tiny notch so that I can have it on my fabric. Okay, so right here now, this is my wording piece that I've already cut out, and I'm simply going to unpin this paper from my fabric right now. Okay, because the next thing I'm going to do is to iron down my wording piece on my fabric. So while cutting out on your fabric, like I said earlier in the first part of this tutorial, don't forget to notch your under bust line, because it's going to be of great help. All right, so that by the time you are placing your wording piece, you just have to place it exactly on your under bust. That's the parts where you notched. Okay, instead of going through the stress of actually marking half of an inch. Okay, because our wording piece is not going to start from the edge or the top part of our fabric. All right, so I'm going to make sure that I place this wording exactly on the notch which I made, and the part that will be placed on the wrong side of your fabric, actually this wording piece is placed on the wrong side of my fabric, will be the shiny part of your wording. So when you get your wording, if you look at it closely, you realize that there is a shiny part and there is a part that is not shiny. So the shiny part is the part that serves as your gum. So that is the part you are meant to place on the wrong side of your fabric, as I'm placing mine right here. Okay, so by the time you place this, you can use your pin and hold it down, and now go ahead to iron this just as I've done right here. So after doing that, now I'm flipping this to the front part, and I'm going to place the side front of my piece to the center front this way, and I'm going to start pinning from the base of this particular bustier I'm working with right here, as you can see right here. Right, so I'm going to pin from the base all the way to the top part, and you realize that it's going to align. Okay, so after pinning, I'll just go ahead and mark half of an inch on that part all the way to the top part, and I'll go ahead and stitch. So that was the reason I gave this half of an inch, which was for my joining allowance. Okay, so you're going to stitch just the way I've showed you right here, and also do the same thing for your lining piece. So for this part which I labeled my sleeve, I went ahead to remove all this pattern paper from my fabric, And while you are cutting out your sleeve, please do make sure you make indications on the part that is for your armhole and your shoulder, because it's going to be kind of confusing, right? So this is the part I'm going to stitch, this slanted part. I'm going to stitch that part because I already left half of an inch. Okay, so that's the only part I'm going to stitch under my sleeve. Now for this my back piece, I'm going to remove this paper as well from my fabric, and I'm going to get, okay, I will separate this into two first. Then I will get my lining piece and I'll place it right side facing this my fabric. So I'm going to stitch the neckline area, I'll stitch the zipper area, and I'm going to stitch the sides using just 1/4 of an inch. Okay, it shouldn't be more than 1/4. All right, so you can see me illustrating all of this. So guys, I'll go ahead and do all of this. And for the front part, this is what I have. I've gone ahead to join, and this is what I have. You can see that it's already standing perfectly. So yours should also be like this, because you're on the safe side if it's like this. So with this my tailor's ham, I'm just going to place it underneath this my fabric, and I'll open up this my stitches like this. I'll sprinkle water and I'll use my iron to iron this very flat. Okay, so I'll keep that aside now. And for the lining piece of my front dress, I also did the same thing. Okay, so for this back part, now you can see I've joined all the parts, and I'm just flipping it now to the right side from my armhole. So this is what I have after doing all of that, as you can see. So the next thing I'm going to do is to also flip that of my sleeve part, and after all of this, now I'll just go ahead now and iron out all of this piece. Okay, so I'm going to iron it very well, and I'll come back and show you all what I have right here. So like I said, for this particular sleeve, make sure you make indications so that you know the part that is your shoulder and the part that is for your armhole, because by the time I did this I was a bit confused. Please take note of that. Okay, so now I've gone ahead now to iron out this my front piece, just as I said, and you can see I ironed everything, my seam open. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to get this my sleeve part, and I'm just going to place it this way, making sure that the part where I stitched down is facing like towards the neckline area. Okay, so I will now flip this way and now pin the right side of this my sleeve on that part on top of my piece this way. Okay, so I'm going to pin it down. All right, so after doing this, now I'm going to get my lining piece. All right, I'll get my lining piece, and I'm going to use this and cover up this my fabric this way. So it's actually right side of my lining piece facing the right side of my fabric. Okay, I hope it's not confusing. Make sure that the sleeve, the part which I labeled sleeve, is inside. Okay, it's on top of your fabric before you start pinning. So you can see that this aligns properly and perfectly. And if you actually want to iron your hairstay to all of this, you are free to actually do that. I didn't have hairstay as at the time I was making this dress. So after this, I'll just go ahead and pin my lining piece to my fabric all around. So right now I'm just going to stitch the top part using just half of an inch. I'll stitch the sides and I'll stitch the base. All right, so after this, after stitching, I flip this to the right side, and this is what I have, as you can see right here. So by the time you flip this, you're going to have your sleeve, you bring it out. Okay, so that is simply all I did right here, and you can see it's actually coming out nice. So the next thing I'll do now is to join the shoulder part of this my dress. Okay, so now you see what I will do right here on the shoulder is that I'll make sure I place this lining to lining and fabric to fabric, and I'll stitch using just half an inch. This is to get a clean effect or joining on your shoulder. Okay, so just bring it out this way on your shoulder part and stitch lining to lining and fabric to fabric, just the way I'm doing right here. So feel free to also pin your shoulder if you want to do that actually. And you see, just place it this way, lining to lining, fabric to fabric on the right side. Okay, so make sure the two right sides are facing each other. So where you make the stitch is actually on the wrong side, just half of an inch. And by the time you do this, trust me, you're going to have very neat joining on your shoulder. Okay, so after that, after I must have done that, I'll go ahead as well to also join the sides of my dress. Okay, so the stitching allowance I give to this was 1.5 inches, right? So I'm going to just use my chalk and mark 1.5 inches all the way to the end, and at the end of the day this is what I had. So on that shoulder you can see that you are not seeing the seam. Okay, so that is the purpose of actually joining your two shoulders that way. And the next thing now is to get our flare, which we have already cut out, and you can see how wide this flare is. So I'm actually going to fold this into two, and I'll get the middle of this flare, which is that point. I'll use my chalk to highlight that part properly so you see it. And the same thing for this my net. I'm also going to, this net I didn't cut it as flare, I just cut it out straight. Okay, because I'll be gathering it now on this my flare which I cut out right here. So I'll fold this my net into two, and I'll get the middle. So that middle I'm going to place it on this middle of my flare just this way, and I'm going to pin. So I had 6 yards of this net, so I separated it 3 yards. Okay, because I want to have this double joining or triple joinings, right? So after I pin the middle part of the net to that of my flare, I'll get the ends of the net and my flare, and I'm going to pin it at the end. Okay, so you can see what I mean. So by the time I pin this, I'm going to have these excesses in between the ends of this my flare to the middle. So that is why I have to now pleat my net on this my flare. Remember, I'm pleating only the net on the flare. Okay, so I did it for the two sides. I pinned the ends of the net to the end of my flare just at that point. Okay, so by the time I do this, I'll get the second net, which is also 3 yards, and I'm also going to do the same thing I did for this particular one, right? I'll pin the middle of the net to the middle of this flare, and also pin the ends of the net to the end of this my flare. I hope it's not confusing, right? So as you can see right here, that is all I was trying to do right here. So please make sure you pin it at the both ends of your flare, sorry. Okay, so in order to have these excesses in between the ends or the sides of this flare and the middle, so you all are going to see how I'm actually going to pleat this net. Okay, so I'll have to pleat until I get up to the middle point, and I'll start pleating for the other side. So the reason for this is to achieve the same gathered effect or the same effect at both sides, because most of the times if you don't do this, you end up having one side of your pleats more than the other side. So it's really advisable you actually do this I'm doing right here, so you achieve the same effect on both sides of your pleats or gathers. Okay, so I'm arranging this properly, and after arranging this, I'll start pleating as you can see I'm doing right here. So this really helps me a lot, like it helps me a lot. So I'll advise that you start doing this in case you don't do this. Okay, it really helps me a lot. Okay, so like I said earlier, please don't forget that I'm pleating only the net to the flare, to my fabric. I'm not pleating my fabric yet. That is this flare I have here. It's just I'm pleating the net only, just the net alone to the fabric. Okay, so I'll continue doing that, and after that now I went ahead now to run a stitch across. You can see at that top part I've run a stitch right there, and now is in one piece with my flare or my fabric. So the next I'm going to get the upper part of my gown. I'm going to bring it into two this way. I will try and notch the center point, that's the middle point of this my upper part of my gown. By the time I do that, just a little tiny notch, I'm going to get the middle part of my flare can see, I'll make sure that it aligns with that on the middle point on the upper part of my gown. So you can see right there, I'll go ahead and pin. So I'm also going to get the ends or the sides of my flare and pin it to the sides or the ends of my upper part of my gown. I'll just call it the upper part of my gown. So I'll pin it. So you also see I have this SSC in between. So that is the same way I'm also going to pleat. Alright, so maybe I'm making a separate tutorial on the different types of pleats we have. So for this particular gown, I use the kiss pleat, right? So these SSCs I'm also going to now pleat it. So by the time I pleat it more, I'm going to have this full gathered effect of this my net, right? So I'll just pleat this and show you all what I'm going to do, because most of the times if I'm pleating directly on my sewing machine, I don't always pin, but because of this tutorial I had to start pinning so that you all will have a clear understanding of what I actually mean, for the sake of those who are not really used to this. Okay, so I'll continue pleating this and pinning as well. So I'll pin this till I get to the middle point of this my flare. As you can see, I've done it for one side. So when I do this, I'm going to flip this to the right side, so that the right side of my fabric, so that you have a better understanding of what it will look like by the time I'm done sewing for one side. Okay, so this is what I mean. You can see what I have. So I'll do it for the two sides and stitch using just half of an inch on the waist area. Okay, so right here now I've done that, and this is the result of what I have. So after that, I'll just simply go ahead and fix my zipper, as you can see right here, and I'll also go ahead and fix any sleeve of my choice. All right, so this is the beautiful outcome of this gown, guys, and that was all for this tutorial. So by the time you are done, just go ahead and weave the base of your flare, and that is basically all. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I hope you also try it out, because this gown actually came out so nice. Thank you to my subscribers, and if you're also subscribed to my channel, please kindly do so. See you guys on my next one. I love you all. Bye.